I really would like the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Poilievre, with all due respect to him and the role he plays, I would like him to get a top secret clearance.
For him to try and say, well, Pierre Poilievre's the reason that we can't keep things secret. Pierre Poilievre is the reason that we have top secret security issues. Pierre Poilievre is the reason why we can't be transparent as a Liberal government. Are you freaking kidding me?
In one breath, Canada says we stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, sending billions in aid and military support. But in the very next breath, when it comes to Iran, the Liberals say, this is not our war. So which is it?
Let's take a look.
As U.S. President Donald Trump calls on allies to support protecting commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says Canada's focus is on the de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East.
The position of our country will be to continue to indicate that there should be no weaponization of international shipping lanes, period. And that includes the Strait of Hormuz. Our current conversation with Gulf countries rests on how we can continue to support them, especially in the face of indiscriminate attacks, retaliatory in nature by Iran.
With all eyes on the Gulf, another conflict is at risk of being overlooked. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today with an appeal to other world leaders.
The focus must remain on Ukraine. There is obviously a conflict in Iran going on in the Middle East, but we can't lose focus on what's going on in Ukraine. Putin can't be the one who benefits from the conflict in Iran.
Joining me now is Defense Minister David McGuinty, who was visiting today the Rochelle production facility in Brampton, which is currently producing armored vehicles for Ukraine. Nice to see you, Minister. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, JP.
Let's start with Ukraine and your announcement today. By all accounts, Moscow seems to be thrilled with the recent events in the Middle East. Of course, oil prices have surged, which is a huge benefit to their petro state. The U.S. is churning through munitions that could have been earmarked for Ukraine. The focus is really far from Vladimir Putin's war. Still, Canada is providing some more equipment. Tell me about this new commitment you made today.
Well, this contribution of almost 400 armored vehicles builds on about 250 that we provided previously, JP. This is desperately needed on the ground. We, of course, work with Ukraine directly to get a sense of what their needs are. This is a perfect example of a Canadian company obviously providing important material for this war, which is being prosecuted by very brave Ukrainians. But it also indicates that we are building a whole new expanded industrial defense base here in Canada as part of our defense industrial strategy. Many countries, including Ukraine itself, has come to Rochelle here in Brampton in southwestern Ontario to order these vehicles and have been using them on the field there in the ground for several years. So we have not taken our foot off the accelerator here. We are paying very close attention to what's going on in that particular area as that war is being prosecuted. And we're there. We're with our Ukrainian colleagues. We are providing an additional $2 billion of material support in the new fiscal year coming. This will continue. We are convinced that the Ukrainian army, the Ukrainian armed forces are going to win this battle. But we would also like to see this come to an end and come to a cessation of hostilities sooner than later.
Did he say $2 billion with a B?
With a B, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so this is the thing, and we discussed this a few weeks ago on one of our episodes, is that Canada is giving Ukraine all this money, but Canada is also, or we have just also signed this deal for Chinese electric vehicles, so we're giving money to China for those vehicles, right? And who is China friends with? Who are they allied with? Russia. So China is helping Russia in this war, and we're helping Ukraine while also helping China, who's helping Russia. So what is going on?
Here's the other issue with this. So McGuinty is trying to take credit for Mark Carney for this Canadian company. So they're like, well, see, you know, we're investing in our industrial military strategy, but you're not. You're trying to take credit for this company actually operating and producing vehicles that are being ordered. But you just said that they've been doing this for years. So it had nothing to do with Mark Carney and had nothing to do with the Liberals. This is just yet one more added on to the stack of all of the things that Mark Carney is trying to take credit for that he had absolutely nothing to do with.
Well, if you can take credit for it, why not, right?
Well, that
That's
seems
the-
to be the Liberal strategy.
I was going to say that's the liberal way.
When you accomplish nothing, claim success based on other people's laurels. So that's the thing that really blows my mind about this.
There's a question about whether it will end, because we heard from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He was speaking to reporters, and he says that the only way this conflict comes to a close is if Ukraine agrees to all of Putin's demands. He wants the Donbass, yes, but there's more. No peacekeeping force on the ground in Ukraine, no NATO membership for Ukraine, demilitarization of the country. Prime Minister Mark Carney was just meeting with his Nordic counterparts. I know you were on hand for that. Then there was this meeting with the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. What does this mean? What does Russia's position mean for the coalition of the willing when there seems to be no end in sight?
It means we go back to the negotiating table and we start negotiating. And we try to enlist the United States again to provide their good offices to be able to pull the parties together. We go back at it because that's not an offer. That's not a negotiation. That's a very hard position being put forward by the Russians. But we've got to go back at this and start again and start the dialogue so we can find a proper outcome that will lead to first a cessation of hostilities and then secondly an end to the war.
Let's talk about the Middle East, which of course is top of mind for most people right now. President Trump is lashing out at NATO allies again today, criticizing countries like Canada for providing no military support to help with the U.S. war effort against Iran. Have you faced any blowback from the Americans over Canada's position?
Well, first of all, it's important for Canadians to remember that we were not consulted before this war began being prosecuted by the United States and Israel. Secondly, we have not been involved in the prosecution of this war. And thirdly, we're not going to be involved in the prosecution of this war. So we made that very plain for weeks now, since this began. We've not had any formal overture here to us in Canada. NATO has not had any formal overture, to my knowledge. We're working with my colleagues at NATO now. Look, the president's going to say what he's going to say. We can only manage what we can manage here. We control what we can control. And what we can control is to do a few things. First of all, let's get our Canadians out of the region, those that want to get out of there. We've got a team here in Canada and teams across the Middle East to do just that. And secondly, I have a high obligation, a very serious obligation, JP, to make sure that our Canadian Armed Forces members in the region are safe and sound. And they are now, and we're making sure that they are. We're monitoring the situation hour by hour, day by day. It's a very fluid, very dangerous situation. We don't know what the Iranians will do. We don't know how they will respond. There seems to be no coherence at this stage. So we're watching it very carefully, and we will govern ourselves accordingly.
Not 30 seconds before, we're standing with Ukraine. We're sending $2 billion to Ukraine. We're bragging about armored vehicles being produced in Canada, sent to Ukraine. Now he says about Iran, a country that has attacked our citizens,
Killed them.
over 150 of them,
Yeah.
on an air flight, has attacked a base with Canadian soldiers in it. And he's saying, well, we're not involved in that. We're not going to be involved in that. Wait a minute. So Russia hasn't attacked Canada. Russia's attacked Ukraine. But we're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars over there, and all of our equipment, sent all our ammunition over there. We don't have any ammunition anymore.
Or hardly any.
Hardly any. 3 days worth. But Iran isn't our war. How do you square that, Mr. McGinty? Oh, wait, it's because Trump and Israel are over there.
You know, I find it very interesting that Mr. McGinty had made the point that, you know, we're trying to negotiate with Russia, but we need the Americans to do that. And now they're kind of I don't want to say they're outright disparaging the Americans for the war in Iran, but they're not supporting them either. So it's a very interesting position.
Well, Mark Carney inferred, everyone knew what he was saying at the Davos speech. Everyone knew what he was talking about. You didn't have to say it. You knew what he was talking about when he was talking about, these hegemon countries. Everybody understood he was talking about the United States and Donald Trump. That's the power of inference, folks. And then what does he expect? That was obviously to provoke Donald Trump. And now they're saying, well, the U.S. isn't doing their part. The U.S. has been pretty much the only ones that have been trying to get Russia and Ukraine to come to an agreement. They've done so several times. They've hosted several summits. So for McGuinty to come out and now say that, hey, we need the U.S. Well, what do you think they've been doing this whole time? This is the issue. So when they try to shut all this down in the Middle East, you guys are nowhere to be found? You don't care about a country that actually killed 150 of our civilians? No response from Canada other than a finger wag? It's all because of the U.S. and Israel. And we can't really support anything that Israel does, can we, Mark Carney?
Not if you're a liberal.
But aren't you worried about the possible consequences of refusing to participate militarily? I mean, Trump said to the Financial Times that NATO faces a very bad future if the U.S., if the allies don't really come through and help them out. And of course, that alliance is so central to Canada's security. Now you've got the U.S. president saying that all its members have been very foolish. That seems to be a troubling development, doesn't it?
Well, listen, first thing to remember is Canada is extremely dedicated to the alliance. We've really increased our presence, we've increased our spending, our 2% by March 31st, for example. So we're going to continue to remain steadfastly supportive of NATO. All of the members will as well, and for that matter, I believe the United States will as well. I think they understand that we've all got different roles to play. We've come together. We're taking a very leadership role. Canada is on the Ukrainian front. For example, we've got 3,000 members of our forces at our forward operating location in Latvia, 14-nation multinational brigade that Canada is commanding. We have our job cut out for us on that front, for example. So look, we're going to take stock of what the situation is hour by hour. I'll be talking to my NATO colleagues. We will continue to dialogue and come together. And for that matter, we're just going to monitor this at this stage. But we have other responsibilities, as I say, like getting Canadians out of there and making sure that our Canadian forces are safe.
You mentioned coherence. We had retired Lieutenant General Andrew Leslie on the program yesterday, and he told me there really is no coherence to what Trump is prosecuting over there in the Middle East. And he said Canada should stay as far away as possible from this conflict. He says that we really can't trust Trump and the American armed forces he leads to back up Canadian sailors and warships if we were to send them over there and things go awry. Is that why Canada hasn't provided any assistance to this point? We just really don't trust the Americans to be a reliable partner right now?
We haven't jumped into the fray and entered into offensive capabilities because this is not our war. This is a war that was declared by Israel and the United States. We've been very clear from the beginning. We were not consulted, we have not been active, and we're not going to be active. I have said, however, that if any of the neighboring states in and around Iran may need some help from Canada, for example, on critical infrastructure, water systems, we'll take close note of that. We're watching it carefully. In terms of the coherence or incoherence of that, JP, I'll leave that to the operational experts in the Canadian Armed Forces. General Leslie has a background. He's got good experience. But I think right now I'll take my advice from those folks who have got their finger on the pulse. They're getting just in time, hour by hour updates on what's happening. So right now we've made our decision. We're monitoring closely. And like I say, we will govern ourselves accordingly.
Gee, I wonder why all the Canadians that watch CBC don't seem to trust the United States.
Maybe because we're told that our closest ally, the one that we've fought side by side with, I'd say since the War of 1812 where we burned down their White House, but that aside, that we've fought with for 200 years as allies, and now we're being told that, we can't trust them. We can't trust them to keep an eye on our troops or even do what's in their best interest, even though we're fighting on the same side. I don't believe that. Do you?
Well, the CBC will have you say, or will say, well, we didn't say that the Canadian people shouldn't be trusting the United States. We just asked the question. We said on the air that we talked to this other guy who, we're positioning as an expert. We're positioning as somebody with authority, and we're positioning as someone you should trust. And he said that we should trust the Americans. Should we not trust the Americans? This is the garbage that is coming out of CBC at this point.
Okay, think of how many borders, like border crossings, there are in this country, and they're manned on both sides by Canadian and American. There's at least 3 that I can think of, 3 bridge crossings in the Niagara Falls region where I grew up. So you're going to tell me that like you can trust them to guard the borders of their country, but you can't trust them to fight together against an enemy?
Well, my question is, how can you say this isn't our war, so we're not going to be there? Okay, let's just look at your logic, Mr. McGinty. So Israel and the United States, sure, they declare war on Iran. Fine. And it's because they're allegedly working towards producing nuclear missiles, and their entire country is in chaos because they are slaughtering protesters. That's basically what's going on in Iran.
Well, and it goes above and beyond that because, I mean, look at how they've been treating the women since the 70s.
Right. And
like, there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on there.
And Iran has been financing Hamas and all of this other stuff that's going on. So they've said, all right, enough is enough. So Israel and the U.S. has declared war on Iran. Russia declared war on Ukraine. Okay? So by Mr. McGinty's logic, that's not our war either.
Touche.
Ukraine isn't even an official ally of NATO, so therefore is not an official ally of Canada. So how can you say that we're okay sending over now $13 billion of taxpayer money over to Ukraine? How can you say that is our war? And we've sent 3,000 troops over and we're in command of the area and we're showing leadership on Ukraine. That's what you just said. But now you're looking at an official NATO ally going into Iran who has attacked our civilians, who has attacked a base with our forces were present, and you're saying that's not our war. Somebody explain this to me, because maybe I'm just too dumb or too conservative to understand what's going on here.
You mentioned the Gulf states. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand said today that Canada is considering ways to potentially protect the Gulf states if there is further missiles and drones from Iran, which we know there was today, in fact. Is there any military options on the table with respect to that? If Canada is called upon by its allies to help, is there something that you're considering?
Look, it is in the nature of the Department of Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces to be prepared and to put forward options for consideration. But at this time, no. We weren't consulted, we have not been active, and we will not be active in the offensive nature of this war. Now, if there's help to be provided in terms of getting people out or assisting with desalination water plants or looking at some other elements of support for neighboring states, states with whom we have a relationship, states with whom we are building stronger relationships, we'll look at all of those alternatives. We'll look at all those eventualities, JP. But right now, we're not in that situation. We're really in a situation of monitoring. It's a very fluid situation, very unpredictable one. In particular, in terms of these missiles being sent, these drones being sent out of Iran, very, very unpredictable, very seemingly incoherent and sporadic. So we'll, again, take close note of what's happening, and we will react if we have to.
You mentioned protecting Canadian personnel in the region. Of course, an airstrike hit a Kuwaiti base where some Canadian Armed Forces personnel were stationed. There has been some criticism of how the military handled this. Some folks are saying other countries are more transparent about this war and its risks. Your conservative defense critic says it's really shameful, frankly, that Canadians have been left in the dark about what went on in Kuwait. Will you commit to provide more transparency? Don't the people here in this country have a right to know what's going on with their armed forces?
They have a right to know as long as it has no bearing on the operational security and the security of the armed forces, women and men who may be serving in the region. I can't put these individuals at risk. And calls to put them at risk by revealing information that should not be revealed is, I think, sort of reckless. It's dangerous. And as I said just a little while ago, I really would like the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Poilievre, with all due respect to him and the role he plays, I would like him to get a top secret clearance so he can come in and get actually briefed on the situation on the ground. I think he would have a better understanding of the importance of making sure that this information is kept confidential because of the risk it might put our men and women in terms of harm's way. That's why this is my highest obligation, to make sure that these good serving members are not put in danger, and they're not. We made sure that they are safe and sound.
Are you freaking kidding me?
This is the same guy, just so everybody knows, this is the same guy who said that if you reveal, like if you try to talk about anything that is included in this security clearance, that you would be prosecuted.
This is unreal. And these liberal ministers and the rest of the caucus, quite frankly, speak about it as if MPs don't have some sort of security clearance to begin with. So once again, let's unpack it. All MPs, when they get the job, have what would you call it? They go for fingerprinting essentially, and they have a security clearance. That's why when we go to Parliament with our MP, he gets to go through the one side, and we have to go through security because they've already checked him. He works here; they know that he's clean.
And over and above that, party leaders get an additional security clearance.
Right now, only the Prime Minister and some very top officials get top secret clearance. If you had a opposition leader with top secret clearance, I think that would actually be more of an issue than a benefit.
Well, the issue isn't with the top secret clearance. The issue is with the type of security clearance that they want him to get. Because notice that Yves Blanchette doesn't talk about foreign interference because he can't, because he got that security clearance from NSICOP. This is what they're talking about. But they want to try and conflate that with a different type of security clearance, which is top secret. They're not going to give Pierre Poilievre top secret.
No, like I said, there's only a few people in this country that have top secret security clearance, and one of them is the Prime Minister.
And there's many different levels of security clearance. There's protected B, there's protected A, there's secret, there's top secret, and then there's even additional ones on top of that. Used to work for the government. Well, I had a security clearance.
You needed a security clearance. I remember that we had to go downtown and get you fingerprinted, and they sent it off and got your security clearance. Now, it wasn't top secret security clearance, obviously, but it was a type of security clearance.
Right. So, and the fact that this is what is shameful, actually, about this part, is when he is told, listen, you've been criticized for not actually being transparent about what is going on with our forces in Kuwait. And then he tries to say, well, I can't divulge information that is going to pose an operational risk to our forces. What's the operational risks? Are you afraid that Iran is going to send missiles to the exact same spot that they already did? The risk has already been there. And guess what, Mr. McGinty? There's satellite imagery of it. That's been covered. Not just by La Presse, but with other news publications around the United States. That's how it was found out. So your top secret security clearance isn't really keeping that very secret, now is it? And this is what people are calling out. And for him to try and say, well, Pierre Poilievre's the reason that we can't keep things secret. Pierre Poilievre is the reason that we have top secret security issues. Pierre Poilievre is the reason why we can't be transparent as a Liberal government. Are you freaking kidding me?
That's such garbage. How could the guy who does not have top secret security clearance because he is not the Prime Minister divulge top secrets?
Right? Well, he needs to understand, he understands plenty. And the fact that the Canadian people are only hearing this because for some reason you don't want to get in a war in which Israel's involved, in which Donald Trump is involved, probably for political points, that is just outrageous. And this is why we did a video the other day, which you should go and watch, because it's from the former Liberal leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. He is now the mayor of Vaughan, and he has called out Mark Carney and his Liberal government. And he said, you're more concerned about counting votes than you are about actually protecting your people. And Mr. Carney and his Liberal government seem more concerned about keeping Donald Trump as the boogeyman, as the crutch that they can use to keep trying to scare people into supporting them, rather than saying, you know what? We need to support our allies and our allies that we've fought with for over 200 years, as Tanya says, and we need to stop being scared of doing the right thing and doing what's politically convenient for us.